Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for the first edition of the CDO Roundtable. So the intent behind launching these sessions is to bring together senior data leaders from different industries to exchange perspectives on how data and AI are creating real business value, what challenges organizations are still working through, and what will define truly data-driven organizations over the next few years. So we are fortunate to have with us today distinguished leaders from education, insurance, and we are still waiting for Denis from industrial engineering, sectors with very different contexts, but also some very relevant common themes, and that's what we aim to find out today. So I'm delighted to welcome Vida Williams, CDO at Stride, Akash Gupta, Chief Analytics and Strategy Officer at Fetch Pet Insurance, and hopefully we will get Denis Boudailliez, the CEO at John Cockerill. Thank you all for being here. So let me hand over to each of our panelists for a brief introduction. I'd invite each of you to share a short overview of your organization, the industry in which you operate, and what your role covers. So Vida, why don't we start with you?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vida Williams. I am the Chief Data Officer at Stride. Stride is a portfolio company that manages and seeks to grow in the industry of education from K-12, which is our K12.com brand, all the way through to our young adult education and certifications in the company that is Tallo. In these spaces, I work to refine our data architecture as well as make data available for the innovation usage using AI, because that's what we're here to talk about, but also hopefully revolutionarily changing the way that we create learning platforms for learners of all ages. So that's me. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Vida. Akash?
Hi, everybody. I'm Akash Gupta from Fetch Pet Insurance. I lead strategy and analytics at Fetch. I've been here about 5.5 years. So Fetch Pet Insurance, it's largely a B2C company. We reach out to customers directly. We sell our website directly in shelters, through our call centers, and we process pet claims. So we are a Warburg Pincus owned, a private equity owned company they bought us in 2019. So it's a very interesting theme we follow here. It's called profitable growth. It's very different from we just simply growing. We are super heavily focused on how do we reduce our CAC, increase our lifetime value, and all that is data driven. And we have been very heavily focused on not only collecting more data, finding it, refining it, but also converting into decisions so that we can continue our profitable growth. So I'm super excited here to talk about how we are using data to convert into insights, but also how we are exploring AI, the new tool that we can extract even more value from our data. So happy, very excited to join Shiraz and Vida and Denis in this conversation.
Thanks, Akash. So I think you covered most of the themes that we plan to address in our conversation today, but probably just to dive a little deeper into the context. Vida, to start us off, could you probably elaborate why is data strategic in your organization and industry? And probably related to that, what are the most important, if you had to select a few, the most important decisions in your business that depend on data being timely and trusted and actionable?
So I think education provides a very unique use case as an industry for the use of data. When we are thinking about how a learner learns, we have to inspect the outcome of our various techniques in order to get them to learn, right? So if we're thinking about a traditional brick and mortar classroom, the teacher is definitely cueing off the teacher, say in a math class, has the student actually mastered the concept of improper fractions, right? Well, in a multimodal or online fashion, we don't have that type of feedback. We don't always get the immediate physical presence of frustration, maybe with the topic. We have to wait until the child submits some type of work product, whether an assessment or classroom or have you, and how they engage with it. What is it? How long did they struggle with this? How long did they stay with this problem? We can actually refine how we are able to interact with the student and personalize their experience based on the data that we are collecting as they're going through that experience. If we are really good at what we do, then the ability to gather those insights will enable us to look at learners on a much broader spectrum and be able to meet their needs right where they are, as opposed to normalizing the educational experience where we have outliers both to the positive and to those who are struggling a little bit. So that's where I see the biggest impact. Now, if we think about that from an educational perspective and we're gathering those insights are then useful in other human-based industries, such as insurance, even, Akash, but definitely saying medical, social services, and other human-centric type of experiential businesses. So that's how I see the centricity in education, but also how what we're doing here can apply across industries where the human is centered.
Thanks for that, Vida. So, just to follow up on what you said, when we're talking about personalization as a big opportunity in the industry and where a lot of focus on the data is, how do you balance the opportunity around personalization with the responsibility around privacy and governance?
Yes.
Because that's that's where a lot of focus on data is right now.
I would say even more emphatically, not just humans, but children, right? Our biggest customer base are children, under 18s and under 13s. In the United States, under 13s have a much more rigorous legislative and regulatory component to it. And in education, we hit all of the big ones from COPPA to FERPA to HIPAA. You know, we are covered by all of those regulations. And then lastly, I would say the fast moving regulatory landscape when applying AI means that we have to look state by state because we are a United States based company and we are in 32 states. We have to look at every state and try to forecast where that state is headed in terms of how we have to protect the student data from exposure. And I would say that that is probably the crux of how I interpret it. So every single child, every single interaction they have, that is a data point. Said differently, data is equal to a human interaction in its context. If we understand it that way, and I allow all of my architects and engineers to look at it that way, then what we're not doing is trying to meet the regulatory rigor. That would be the byproduct of us ensuring that our students have minimal exposure to data, to danger through their data, right? So we have robust data catalogs, stewardships, training. We do very, very robust training throughout our organization to make sure that everybody understands the principle of leading with safe data. We work very closely with our legal teams, our InfoSec teams, as well as our audit teams to make sure that all of the data elements are encapsulated and we have overlapping reviews. It's a pretty serious endeavor that we took on, and stewardship is the thing that we take the most serious. I do feel like, and I'll end with this, if stewardship is the principle, then you design everything else, every interaction, every application after that from that lens. It lowers the risk point both to the student as well as to the enterprise. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Akash, and I saw you nodding there as well. But before that, could we go a little deeper into your individual context as well? I mean, insurance obviously really data intensive, but there are so many use cases. I mean, it's pricing, underwriting claims, customer experience. So, what, according to you, would be your strategic priorities where data is concerned?
Yeah, I think I'll start with actually the example that Vida gave, right, which is how do you use data to improve customer experience? I think that's what it was. In essence, it was. So I categorize data usage in three different large buckets. One is how do we provide value to the customer? For example, we created a health report for dogs where a customer can download, enter a basic data of health history, and get a predictive model of this is the chances of an allergy, this is what it will cost, this is it costs 80th percentile in your area to over next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So that's a clear customer value add where we converted data into a report that customers can use. The second is the process decision. When we process claims, when we do actuarial pricing, we are using data for those decisions on a very regular basis. It's almost like no analyst is coming in between. It's just like it's working like a machinery. And then the third bucket is what I call is tactical and strategic business decisions, where we take the data, we process into reports, we tell like what is my KPI, A/B testing. If I do this, do I get that? Should we spend money on getting leads on mobile devices or not? Should we acquire this shelter or not? We shall sell through shelters. We have in-person agents in there. It's a very important decision for us. Should we put a paid salesperson in that shelter or not? Because is it worth our ROI or not? So that all is driven by data, and that's what I call it like the tactical and strategic business decisions based upon data. So those are the three buckets I categorize my data usage in.
No, and obviously these are three very large as well as important buckets, right? What do you think about building the right data foundation which cuts across all three?
I think I would categorize the problem in like two different vectors, if you may, right? The first one is like organization understanding the data is important and making sure like you have the right storage, the right fidelity, right security, and right amount of investment going in data across the board. Like Vida mentioned, like every interaction that customer makes is a data point. Like when they call us, when they interact on our website, when they submit a claim, or plus all the demographic information that we have about the customer, right? So that's a data point, and it is very important. We need to make sure that even if I don't have a use case right now, that data is still very important, and that's a foundation for a data-driven organization. But the second piece I wanted to mention, the second vector, is it's very important to get an ROI on early usages of data very fast, because otherwise the organization loses the spirit of investing in the data foundation. Yeah. So, and the way I call ROI is basically data is like raw material. Like what decisions need is answers to the questions. So you have to convert that data into some sort of answers. Like, okay, and that's where it's very important to have that early ROI on your data investments to make sure organization believes and continues to invest in that foundation.
Absolutely. And I think, that's sort of preempting the next topic, which I had in mind. Most organizations obviously have invested significantly into data in the last few years, right? But the real test is whether this investment is translating into measurable business outcomes. That's the crux of it all. So if I dive specifically into that, so where is data driving measurable business value in your organization or your industry? And where do you think that there is still a lot of catching up to do? Where is it still falling short? Uh, Vida, Akash, it's open to both of you.
I mean, I think I'm sorry, please.
Go ahead, Vida.
I think for us, hearkening back to my earlier statement, getting to personalization in education is groundbreaking, right? Education worldwide, education in the United States is very much in transformation. We are trying to figure out how to do it better. And we're trying to figure out how to do it more effectively, utilizing technologies as its undergirding base. That's a different way to think about education than we've ever thought about education before. I think natural human inclination is human to human, right? Human to human. It takes humans to teach humans. It takes whales to teach whales, right? But humans, we have these great utilities. And I think the second part of that is how do we refine the utilities with the latest and greatest technological breakthroughs. So in this case, AI. AI has a really big opportunity to dismantle education, right? Like you have literal evidence of cognitive offloading using technology. So how do we back that up and say, okay, if we look at data engineering as a utility, as a practicum to build empowering utilities undergirded by personality, that is what becomes revolutionary in an industry, any industry. But in education, because of its transformational moment, that is it. So in our world, of course, we are highly regulated, especially with student exposure, right? So therefore, what we do is we have gained momentum in looking at the core platforms, such as a learning platform or the learning management system or the student information systems. And we've looked at all of the data we're pulling in from those systems and figuring out how to enable the teachers, the parents, and the students equally to benefit from recreating an infrastructure or where the data indicates challenge, success, mastery, and the trajectories therein. It's one of the most creatively innovative ways, I think, to think about it. And I'm excited to be in industry that way, but it's putting the investment right in the core of innovation as opposed to the containerization of data, if that makes any sense. And for the past 15 years, we've been trying to contain data. What my goal is, especially in this era of AI, is how do we use and leverage data in order to move the needle forward? And so that change of operating model in my engineering course is really where I'm finding the most ROI.
And in this change that you are driving in the organization, perhaps even the industry, are you seeing any pushback? Is there any or rather any obstacles for you in terms of achieving it? Is there a cultural pushback, or because usually organizations are used to a way of working. Do you have the luxury that this is a new industry, and hence there is the opportunity? Yeah.
I'm seizing the loophole in it, right? The loophole is we're transforming. And so if an industry is transforming, it is the best opportunity to find momentum for change because change is already happening. And so if you ride that wave of change, then you can move with that momentum. I think education broadly is resistant to change, right? It's one of our I hate to even call it an industry, right? Because it shouldn't be one. It is literally a social fabric. And so that is a social fabric, but it requires investment to move with where we are as a people in technology intersecting. I just jumped in that moment, and I'm grateful that I work for a company that does invest with momentum. So, so I'm in a really good space. Do I think education as an industry broadly has that? I think we're getting there. I think if you're looking at a lot of the big companies that represent education, either in the publication space or in the management space, you're seeing large scale investments being made to make it more efficient, to make it more effective, and to make it more personalized. And I think those are the three things that galvanize change, right? So, yeah, I'm taking advantage of this moment because I love this stuff. I love it. So, yes.
So, Akash, how do you compare or contrast with this coming from insurance? Yeah.
I think I work in pet insurance, right? So insurance, one of the things is like data has always been the basis for actuarial pricing, right? So it has been like historically, like that has been the foundation of any insurance company. So we always had that, but I think being changing our mindset completely, like we want to be profitable, we want to grow faster. So how can we use data much better for more effective customer acquisition, reducing our cost to service, increasing our lifetime value for customers? And these are business decisions where we have been super heavily using data. I'll give an example, a real world example that we used at Fetch. Back in 2020, 2021, if you go and quoted on our website, you'll get a standard coverage, $15,000 limit, $300 deductible, 80% copay, right? That was a standard coverage. And we used to get a certain amount of conversion from it. And we said like, but that's not effective probably because a small cat or a small dog at age 0 is very different from a large dog at age 4. You'll get a very different prices. Can we customize this price based upon how much for that coverage like you need? So what we started doing was, let's create a very simple mechanism, look at the data, divide the whole quote pool in 5 segments across jurisdiction, across states, so the pricing in every state is different, and then customize the coverage based upon what prices we want to target. But on the top of it, the prices keeps changing every year because you file for new pricing, your competitors are changing pricing. So what we did was we inbuilt an A/B test mechanism. 20% of the quotes go for higher prices, 20% lower, and 60% go to what we target. And we are measuring how do we maximize revenue per quote and which way we should move, right? Across all 5 to 10 segments that we created. And that's an interesting use of data in my way to create business value. So I find this very fruitful, like how if we can continue to use data in this manner in various aspects of the business, I think it will keep creating value.
Okay. No, I think that validates the point that definitely, organizations are seeing value from the data, and they are seeing future potential as well. But it also brings about a certain different aspect, which we keep hearing in our interactions, that a lot of the organizations are becoming data rich, but they are still remaining decision poor. And, I'd like to explore that a little with you as well. So what do you think prevents insights in industries like yours from turning into decisions and action? Because obviously with so much data, you do have the capability of getting the insights, but where does it, is there any challenges, or do you think that it is more of a process which takes place?
I think like data, there's actually a big, connector between data and decisions, which is like, decision doesn't need data. Decisions actually need answers to the questions. And data is a way to answering that question. And sometimes it may be pretty obvious. Like when you have the data, sometimes you have to convert it into metrics, and then metrics into insights. And then you may have an answer. I think a lot of places you may not have the right pipeline to get that data into the right metrics, right KPIs, right insights in front of the business leaders who are taking the decisions. And that becomes one of the biggest blockers. And like a data sitting in an S3 doesn't help a business leader take a decision. Like Vida gave an example, like interaction. We are collecting it all.
Yeah.
Like, what if it's not getting fed back in a
Right.
usable manner, right? It becomes a big blocker. The challenge is it's the solving that problem is not obvious, right? One is like it's very costly to process all the data and which data to use and put it in the right metrics at the right time, and then making it like a lot of time, like, do I have a 10% team which is answering every question from the business leader, or do I give it in a self-serve manner to every group? Like these are very critical like business decision which become a blocker from data to decision making. I think the stronger that pipeline is, the more data becomes useful in decision making. I've seen the transformation both at Discovery, my prior company, where they invested a lot in that pipeline. And it could be as simple as like, okay, get a proper Tableau or a Power BI like tool and make it available to everybody. The decision making quality becomes better right away. To having a proper team which understands enough about data, which understand enough about Google Analytics and things like website analytics, which can answer these questions, and you're becoming a data-driven organization. So I see that as one of the biggest blockers, that lack of investment in that area.
Ida, any comments?
Yeah, because I think this one is interesting. It's one that I've always found super interesting. And I think that finally, using some of the utilities, AI-based utilities, we can actually begin to chip away at it. I think for a long time, data practitioners were almost seen as magic. It was alchemy. How do you take all of this data and then give me this wonderful report, right? Like all these colors and trend lines and, and then people still don't make decisions off of them. They just look good and they validate an intuition. And what I've come to understand, or at least I think I'm understanding, is that it's really a language problem, right? When you're just saying, hey, we have all of the data, you haven't converted the data into questions and answers, and you haven't made it available for inquiry, right? So really what you're trying to do at the root of it all is satisfy a curiosity about something, right? And that curiosity can take a temperature of urgency, right? We've got to get this for a mid-year report, or we need to make sure that we have auditable revenue and that we can see the revenue moving. Like it's still satisfying at the end of the day, curiosity, and that is from the point of view of the person asking the question. And what has happened for many years is we're presenting the data through these utilities from the perspective of the analyst. And we're asking the analyst to interpret it. And I think we're finally moving to this place, at least this is my thesis, because we actively domain our data so that we know we have operational domains, we have student domains, we have teacher domains, like we have specific domains. So instead of just building a wide access well, or we call them all kinds of things. We call them fabrics. We call them lakes. I swear lakes get swampy. I hate data lakes. Like they tend to not be productive for inquiry. But we domain them and we create pipelines for accesses to that point. And then we build in infrastructures. Right now, our favorite flavor of the day is Cortex AI and Snowflake with Streamlit, so that so that our data users can ask the data questions. It is in their point of view. Now, it requires a great deal of training, and it requires creating semantic layers that have a great deal of rigor in terms of access points, right? Like your EDAC models, your RBAC models, your governance models have to be top tier to accomplish this, and we're still in that progress. But I think if we're going to stay on the cutting edge and we're going to continue to find value in the data, then we have to begin to interpret what the data is saying in the language of the beholder, not just the language of the analyst. that is the switch that is happening that architects and engineers have to be responsive to, and quite frankly, have to be more creative about. And so if that thesis is correct, then now the data becomes more insightful. Now it becomes something where curiosity can be expressed. And once expressed, can now result set, right? Because here's always the point, result set and decisions, and those decisions are validated using more data. Now you have the infinity loop of, I think this is right, I validate this is right, this has moved efficiency or effectiveness, and we're now getting new data sets to make that loop more efficient and more effective overall. So that, I think, moving in that order, right? Your access points, your domaining of data, your access points, your governance models, your semantic models, and now the point of view of the person making the inquiry. It sounds more simple than it is to architect, but if architected well, we're seeing major results using these latest technologies to allow access to data.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. The number of conversations that we have where data and reports are generated, insights are generated, but at the end, till the consumer of this insight understands it and sees it in a way that actually fits his or her requirement, it does not matter. We can generate as many reports as we want, but they'll just be left unread. So that's a key point, the consumer experience from the data and the insight perspective. So I think what we are just moving towards the operating model. I think that's a question which is it's highly debated. Like the way data, the way it's organized in the enterprise, does that determine whether decisions can be made, and decisions can be made at scale. So and it's also where strategy architecture meets execution. So what operating model do you think works best in your experience? And of course there could be a context to it in terms of industry, organization, geography, etc. But would it? Do you have a point of view on that? Vida, let's start with you in this one. Yeah.
I do. I think increasingly it's not just the operating model, but it is interpreting the operating model first through your organizational lens. I think that there were over the past 25 years, 30 years that we have been in the industry, and if we think about the separation of technology from data, it's probably about 10, 15 years now that we have been separate. And by separation, I mean they're incentivized differently, right? Technology is definitely incentivized with cost containment, right? How do we keep the costs from rising while still meeting business needs? Data, however, is incentivized by ROI. If I'm investing it, how do we make the business better? I think that was the initial focus of separation. Now we can talk about InfoSec separately, but that is where I think the first intention changed. So now we're starting to see leaders with the title of Chief Data Officer or VP of Insights and Analytics, or now you're starting to get VPs of AI, but you're starting to get upper organizational management and structure and strategy specifically around the use cases of data. You're also getting increased regulations and legislations and all of those things, which require executive perspective and strategy. So I think that the operating model that is adopted by industry, by company, by enterprise, starts with acknowledging the need for expertise and executive leadership and strategy in those areas. Now, once that has taken place, the company is acknowledging and willing to build out that base. I think from there comes a strategic orientation of how data is lifted in the company, whether it's lifted through product and enterprise, whether it's lifted through insights and interrogation, or whether it's accessed directly with the client, the customer themselves. I think that then goes into the creation of the operating model. And I think that is going to be very contextual. I don't think that there's yet one sweeping model that handles them all. And I think in this ever-changing landscape, we're right where we're supposed to be in terms of trying different operating models until we get the one that's right.
Okay. Akash, do you have a point of view on that?
I think kind of, my view is it depends upon the scale of the organization, but like within us, our fetch team, it's about like 300 to 400 people. Like core team is probably like 100 people. And I like the model here, which is the data is created and stored largely by tech teams, right? The web creators, wherever the API is connecting, that's where the data is, claims getting submitted, right? But then it's stored, secured, the fidelity is maintained, it's made available through a specialized data team. It's a small team of 4 to 5 people that will basically make sure every data point is available for processing. And after that, what we have called is the BI team. The BI teams are the one which work very close to answering what is the business question we are trying to answer, what is the business need, and they will convert this data into metrics, KPIs, reports, data cubes, which can be accessed either by themselves to create insights or by business leaders. I need this report daily at 9 a.m. on my dashboard, right? So I think and we also, like, I think the principle that we operate is that data belongs to the enterprise, not to any team. Like we have processes that belong to different teams. They're responsible for that team, but like it's owned by the whole end because it's so core to our existence that it belongs to the overall enterprise. I think we have a sense of ownership of processes, not data itself. And I think that's the model we operate by. And we also operate by that any business owner, whenever they ask for the data and there's no security issues and things like that, like here's an insight, but here's also the underlying report. You can derive your own insight if you want. Like we're not holding the raw data close to us. Like, so basically if they want, they can do it themselves, right? And a lot of leaders are very savvy. They would do it.
Yeah.
They would do all the processing, draw their own insights themselves. So I think that's the operating model we have been using. It will be very interesting how it works with the AI. Like now that we can derive more value from the same data. So like I feel like we're at the exploratory stage of what can we do with it.
No, but I couldn't have said it better. And I saw Vida nodding as well when you said data belongs to the enterprise and not any team. I think that sums it up perfectly. And then you moved into AI, which I think any conversation, whether it's CDOs or anything to do with data, we have to address that topic. So let's jump into the AI question. So it's central to every discussion that we're having these days, but there still seems to be a massive difference between experimentation and real enterprise value. So there are a few topics which come to mind where AI is concerned. So the first one obviously would be in your context. Where is AI genuinely delivering value in your organization, and where do you see it offering more promise than actual reality?
Yeah, I can start on my, I think I would love to actually differentiate AI in 2 buckets, which is the classic ML, machine learning, which has been there for like
ages,
10, 15 years, right? And then the generative AI, which is the LLM models, right? And I think we use it broadly, but there's the one big difference is that ML has been there for 15, 20 years now, right? So we have been using that a lot. It's already generating value for claims processing, for pattern recognition in claims processing, for setting it up. Like it's just simple document, like we get it, images, PDF files, we process it automatically, partially. So we have been on that path for quite a long time, like 5, 6 years. Generative AI is new, right? We are finding like, oh, it can do this too. Oh, it can do this too. It's like every day a new version of it comes out. Where we have find the most value for generative AI, like easiest to get, is using off-the-shelf specific tools. Get an off-the-shelf tool like, oh, these are my call recordings, find insights from it. We are using a tool for actually using AI to generate our machine learning models now, which things which used to take 4 months, now it's taking like 4 hours. So I think that's where we are finding the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. Get a tool that is already doing it. They are specializing in solving this particular problem using generative AI. Let's get that. So that has been our approach right now, while we are still dabbling into how can we use generative AI ourselves for bigger projects, deeper value generation from our data.
Vida?
Yeah, I think for us, so if I look at it from the engineering core perspective, because in my organization, I have everything from architecture all the way over to analytics, insights, and then over to product. So the swing is pretty big. And what I would say is in our engineering course, we have definitely leveraged generative AI to speed up engineering capabilities. Now, there is a danger there. Because people think that now everybody can do it. So it goes faster, everyone can do it, it's all wonderful. And so the disciplined rigor around the ability to still problem solve and edit and make sure that whatever is being generated is true to what the problem is that you're trying to solve, right? You can't use a hammer to cut a piece of paper, right? So if it's generating out a hammer and you had to cut the paper, then we're just wrong, right? So it didn't matter how fast, you got very quickly to wrong as opposed to very quickly to right. And so ensuring that our engineering cores maintain the rigor of the discipline of engineering and architecture has undergirded our ability to leverage AI in that area. Leveraging AI in the area of natural language processing against data so that, again, like I referenced earlier, we can actually have non-data people, non-practice, practical people to inquiry against the data. That has been massive and amazing. And it has lifted our analysts. So they're looking at broad, models of data and they're able to refine them using these utilities. Again, still with the rigor and the discipline of being in practice of data, in practice of engineering. But that's the structure, right? To make sure that we're not going fast to wrong. But I would say on the other side, when I'm thinking about the creation of product using these, our going mantra on product build is generative AI is wrong all the time and gets it right sometimes. That way, because if we're building tools to undergird education and maintenance, or management rather, then we have to make sure that we're hitting a very high threshold of accuracy. And we're using a utility that is at its core probabilistic, right? That's oxymoronic, right? So we need accuracy using a probabilistic utility. So how do we get these utilities to accuracy? And we do so by using AI only as an adjacent utility to engineering. So I think where we're seeing efficiencies, we are seeing it, right? We're speeding things up in a masterful kind of way by applying the discipline and rigor to ensure that the outcomes are there. Using it to undergird product build, that one's a little bit more sensitive. Using it to undergird personalization, again, a little bit more sensitive because the ability to get it wrong is so prevalent. And I would say lastly, continued monitoring. So when we're going to get these utilities that misbehave or hallucinate, we can decommission that model without disturbing the infrastructure, and we can replace it with a better tuned model. So we very much practice modularity in order to get to scale, as opposed to accepting scale with the risk of hallucination and misbehavior. So these are at least the three areas and how we have leveraged AI for effectiveness.
And I would assume that this answer, if I would have asked you the question about 3 months back, it would have been slightly different because as it's evolving. I think our perception and reaction to it is also evolving continuously, right?
Yes. Yes, I would say 3 months ago, we were trying all these things out. We have now validated a lot of what we're working on.
So a question to both of you from not from the operational perspective, but more from the investment perspective. Do you think organizations are becoming more evolved and disciplined in how they evaluate AI investments or Gen AI investments these days?
I honestly think that we're learning some hard lessons. I think the early investments were complete failures. And we're seeing that all over the news, right? In all of our periodicals, we're seeing stories of we made this investment, we cut these people, we went hard in and then had to reverse course. Now, I'm always an admirer of enterprises that go hard first because they are the litmus test, right? They're the canary in the coal mine. Let us know where the fault lines are before we come in on a second wave. My personal opinion is we're on the slight second wave where we've learned some of these early lessons and now we can leverage them better. It's no longer magical. Now it's back to creative engineering. It's validation. It is problem solving. It is critical thinking using these utilities, as opposed to thinking that these utilities take the place of those core core aspects of working in our industry.
Yep. Akash?
I think on the investment piece, I think there are two things which is I think very trend, I would say, is one is that a lot of the usefulness has been validated. The skepticism that will it work or not, is it useful or not, has gone, and people have realized, okay, it works in these cases. And there are a lot of specialized companies which are solving specific problems and you can use it right away. The second piece on investment per se is that in today's environment, it's almost like it doesn't matter if it fails or not, you've got to invest in it. I think that's a public markets pressure that every enterprise is seeing, that we want you to build that muscle, because we know it will be super important in 2 to 3 years. And I think that is one area where, as an exception, most organizations are getting a pass on the ROI right now. That go invest here. We don't care if it works out for the first time or not, because we know this is critical for business survival.
Yeah.
But do you think that the focus is still on the quick wins and the pilots, while because you said you have a 2-3 year window to succeed? So are CDOs and chief analytics officers focusing on the long term and looking at enterprise transformation using AI rather than the quick wins, which are obvious and which can happen within a month or within a few weeks?
I think there's a disconnect between what investors are looking for. Investors are looking for oh, this is AI spend, it's a pass, right?
Yeah.
But internally within organizations, I think having a few quick wins where at least I think there's a lot of, at Fetch at least, we are focused on that, is important to get that organization to step behind, yes, this is working for us, this is how we can make it work. So internally there is a quick win attribute to it, but it's getting a pass from the investors. If you're spending a couple of $1 million on AI right now, can you spend more and accelerate the process? That's the feedback we hear. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. It's probably the first time in my career I'm hearing, can you invest more?
Vida, is this the same for you?
I think it's more of a balancing act. And so I was thinking, well, is this the first time I've seen it? No, this is the third time we've seen it, right? We saw it in .com bust, right? So those of us who grew up young in this career, we saw the same kind of heady investment into technology without also assessing the undergirding business model that led to the first bust, right? And I think in this particular case, because everyone can play with a chatbot, they think that something great is going to come out of it, right? And so you had those early investments. I would say more prudently, it's a balancing act. How do we show a quick win? How do we demonstrate a capability, validate that the technique is worth investing in, while having the discipline and rigor? And I keep going back to those same terms, because you can't use any technology to supplant discipline and rigor to ensure the long-term investment has has a floor, like has a foundation upon which to build from. So I do think it's a balancing act, but I don't think it's a balancing act that we haven't seen before. And I think, and again, I go back to, you asked about the operating model. I think it's incumbent upon those of us who move out of just being tech leads and we move into strategic executive management, that we are helping our partners, CFOs, CEOs, boards, investors to understand that balancing act and to set right expectations. I think that voice needs to be in the room. When it's not in the room, then we're left with unrealistic expectations in the marketplace and in the investor course.
This is really interesting, and I wish we had more time, but I hate to do this. We've got 5 minutes left. I before we end this discussion, move to the rapid fire. One last question to both of you. 2 to 3 years down the line, what do you think organizations who are truly data driven, how would they differentiate themselves? It's forward looking. It's open. Yeah.
And everyone is asking the questions and getting the answers from good data. Remember, bad data in and bad answers out. I think we have refined our ability to house data in a way that the person asking the question can get the answer in the language that they understand. That's what I think.
Akash?
Yeah, I think it's like, I totally agree with what Vida said about getting the data using it appropriately, AI technology, because right now you're getting a free pass. 6 months from now, it'll be like, who invested it properly? Who is getting the most value out of their data using AI? We have a tool here where we can create like 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x more value out of our existing data. And it will be the companies that can drive that will be the winners. And the way it will come out is they will outcompete in their industry. Like they will come out as a big winner. It will be like similar thing what we saw. I'll give an example, like Netflix went into video streaming first. It outcompeted the industry. I think we'll have similar aspect coming here, who can outcompete.
Okay. No, that's great. And I think it's extremely insightful. Okay, so now let's move into the rapid fire. I've got a few short questions. Please try to reply with the first instinctive answers that come to mind. So Vida, we'll start with you. I'll try to be as quick as possible. So what is the one word that you would want students to associate with AI?
My first answer was slop, but my second answer is problem solving.
Problem solving. Okay. What is one leadership quality mission-driven data teams need most?
Integrity.
Great. What is one assumption about ethical AI that you would most like to challenge?
That it's right.
Okay. What book, idea, or voice has most shaped your thinking on responsible innovation?
The Jetsons. The Hanna-Barbera cartoon, The Jetsons.
We need to have a completely different discussion on this. Okay. And the last question for you, Vida, is what personal habit helps you stay thoughtful in a fast-moving technology environment?
Writing longhand every morning before I enter into the world of technology for the rest of the day.
I absolutely know what you mean. Perfect. Thanks for that. Akash, over to you. What is one instinct that has served you best in analytics leadership?
I think business problems comes first. Like, and by that I mean that I got to help my business partner.
Okay.
Right.
What do best business leaders understand about data that often the unsuccessful ones miss?
Data cannot answer all the questions, and it's not forward-looking, it's backward-looking.
Absolutely. Okay. What is one lesson from your career that changed how you make decisions?
Execution is more important. Even though I'm a strategy leader, execution is more important than strategy.
What kind of problem do you most enjoy solving?
I think personally I love tricky puzzles. So I think there are no dearth of puzzles in business environment. That gives me the most satisfaction.
Okay. And the last one is outside work, what most influences how you think as a leader?
I do a lot of sports, so I
Okay.
think that helps shape my leadership a lot. Like I do a lot of team sports, so that's
Okay.
me a lot.
And okay, one common question to both of you in one sentence: what has leadership taught you that data could never?
Be humane.
Sorry, Vida, I couldn't hear you clearly.
How to be humane.
How to be humane. Akash?
Data is single pointed. Humans there's a shades of gray, and so it's a huge difference.
Okay. So thanks for that. And I really enjoyed the rapid fire. I thought that your responses were amazing, really insightful. So let's move. We've got a couple of minutes. If we could just answer a few questions on the Q&A bar. Okay. I'm not too sure whether you can access it, or do you want me to read out a couple of questions?
It would be helpful to me if you could read them. I don't
Okay.
think
So Vida, there's one for you. In education, how do you balance hyper-personalized learning with privacy while enabling teachers self-serve?
I think that's still a problem we're trying to resolve, honestly. I don't think that we've struck the right chord of balancing yet. We definitely are looking at the models in terms of the emotional quotient of the models, making sure that we have proper harvesting of data elements and depersonalizing them in order to do the assessment, as opposed to it's a storage question, it's an exposure question. We're still architecting for that. And I think it's going to take the better part of another cycle, 6 months to a year, for me to have a firm answer on that. But it is top of mind and top priority. The big thing that we're investigating right now.
Okay. So we need to revisit this in a year or so now.
Yes, ask me again.
Akash, for you, in insurance pricing, what is the biggest challenge that you've seen with respect to data governance, leaving change management aside?
I think insurance pricing, I guess it's not a data governance per se, because I don't see we having those kind of issues, like it's fairly secure. But insurance pricing, one of the interesting challenges is that it's regulated. You have to file your pricing model to the states, and it's transparent. Anybody can see it. So that creates a big challenge for us in using complicated models. For example, we can use machine learning models to get the pricing, but we cannot file it because it's not transparent. So how do you convert a machine learning model to a factor-based model back and submit it? That's a very interesting challenge we face all the time.
Oh, perfect. So I think we are just out of time. It's a couple of minutes past 4 over here. So thank you to Vida and Akash. Really appreciate the insightful discussion. Thank you to everybody who joined today. I think it's been particularly interesting to see how both of you from different and contrasting industries are working through many of the same questions. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have this discussion. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Perfect. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.